Hi, I'm Rainer, and welcome to my train room. Um, just thought I would try to put together a slightly different video this week because I've had a lot of new people subscribe to the channel, and I'm not sure how many of you've had time to go through the beginning to see what I've been doing with this layout, when it started, and what the overall plan for it is. Um, so I just thought I would give you a quick kind of a tour of my train room here, just a kind of an idea of what the whole idea is with the layout, and what the status is right now and what my plans are. Um, the last few videos I've been building various buildings and working on some backdrops, but there is an overall plan here. And if you've looked at a lot of my rolling stock, as well as, of course, the logo that you can see here, um, my railroad is loosely, I guess, inspired by the Algoma Central Railway, which is the railroad I grew up riding on as a kid because my dad worked there for 39 years. This room is 8 feet across this way and 16 feet from that end to this end. And it was an empty room that I started working on this layout at the beginning of February of this year, so February 2024. And I've had a couple of other layouts before, but none that ever got to the level of, I guess, complexity that this one is. So it's a double-decker layout, and the Algoma Central Railway, the real ACR, runs from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, up north to Hearst, Ontario. Now it's been through a couple of ownership changes since the good old days that I remember, and the operations on there are just a fraction of what they used to be. But in the good old days, the ACR used to service a number of major industries, the largest of which was Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie, and it used to haul ore down from the mines to Algoma Steel. And then there was also a paper mill in the Sioux, had a couple of different names, but at the end it was St. Mary's Paper, and it is now completely closed down. And that was another industry that the ACR served, bringing pulpwood down from the north down to the paper mill. And there were also some lumber mills along the line and things like that. So iron ore hauling, pulp and paper, logging, things like that, that's what it basically serviced. Now, it does meet up with the CN and the CP as they run east-west well north of the Sioux. So what I've done is created I'm not trying to copy what the ACR did. What I've done is I have created my own version of that, but taking inspiration from that and using a lot of ACR locomotives and rolling stock. The other thing that the ACR was really big on in those days was their tourist train. There was a passenger train that ran up from Sioux up to Hearst and then back again, but there was also a tour train that ran for most of the year. And in the fall season, it had 20 to 30 passenger cars in a row full of tourists going up to see the fall colors up in Agua Canyon and then heading back south into the Sioux. And that train was something that I rode on many times. So that's part of the reason that up here I'm creating a little bit of a park scene with some fall colors. So on my layout, it's summer everywhere else except for in the park where it's fall. But I'm going to show you now kind of what the plan is, starting kind of from what I see as the south end of my line going up to the north end. And this up here, by the way, is the north end. It starts at the other end down at the lower deck, moves all the way up here, and in behind here is a helix, and that's how the trains get up to the upper level. So I will now move down to the other end and show you where it starts, and then how we get up here, and then how it continues from there on. So down at this end of the layout, this is kind of what I see as the south end of my layout. Now, right now, it is nothing but cork with a couple of tracks on it. The plan is to model a part of a steel mill here. I don't have the room to do an entire steel mill. I just want to put a few buildings in here that represent a steel mill. And I do have a couple of Walters kits that are part of their steel mill series that I will be putting in here. And I'm thinking of maybe doing a photo backdrop in the back here as well. And then when we shift from there over, here's my turntable. If you look back in my much earlier videos this year. I have a full video of building this. This is a 90-foot Walters manual turntable. So this is the beginning of my rail yard going this way. Now back there, I have a coal dock. It is not accurate to the Algoma Central Railway in any way at all. It is simply a coal dock kit that I bought from back 25 years ago in Canada. They used to have these HO scale train sets and model kits that they sold at grocery stores, and they're just basically IHC kits and locomotives like this one that were all part of those kits, and they were a really good price. So I bought this many years ago and built it, and I haven't had the heart to not put it on the layout. So I put it there as a place to service my steam locomotives. This is my car shop building. It's the Walters Railroad Shop building that I built in a recent video. This is the home for it. And then this is my rail yard right here. So I will move the camera a little bit. So this is my rail yard. If you look in my last few videos, you can see the construction of these backdrop buildings and what I've done with those. I won't get into a lot of that because I'll just be repeating what's in those videos. But if you want to see what I did and see the lighting effects that I've done in those, have a look at my last few videos that I've done. From there, we move on down the layout back toward the other end and move into what I see as being my paper mill area. So from the rail yard, we move down here, and these are some buildings that I've built. There's not a lot of scenery down in the yard yet or anything, but the idea is that this will be representing, and just like a lot of the other modeling we do, we can't necessarily cover everything, but I'm going to do a highly compressed idea of doing a paper mill here using some of these buildings. And the reason I chose this style of building is, although they're not exactly like the buildings that they had, the paper mill in the Sioux had some very old stone brick buildings that were the original parts of the paper mill, and I kind of like that idea. So I just bought some kind of old-looking brick buildings. This one is a Keybury kit, and these two are part of a Walters kit. And there's going to be more scenery work done here. That's the idea. I'm not sure exactly how it's all going to work out, but that's the idea, that this will represent a paper mill. It's a very small area for a paper mill, I know, but you got to do what you got to do. And then from here, I will try to move out of the way. And then from there, the track curves around, and this area right here is going to be my small town or city scene. And the track curves around behind those buildings that are temporarily placed there, and they go into a helix, and it goes around a helix a number of times to get up to the upper deck. This Ontario Northline locomotive pulling a couple of cars is coming up actually from the other track that does a couple of loops down in my helix and goes down to my lower staging down here. And my lower staging currently is actually a parking area for some cars that need some repair, as well as my DC locomotives, because I am gradually converting to DCC. My entire layout, by the way, is set up with the block control. As you can see, some of these switches, and I can run DC or DCC on any block independently on my layout. So the DC locomotives are totally usable. Currently I have them down here because I have converted, I think, 9 of my locomotives so far to DCC. So I've been running a lot of the DCC up here because it just ends up being easier. I don't have to worry about blocks. So the DC locomotives are currently, most of them other than some of the steamers, are parked down here in my lower staging. And that lower staging leads up around through the helix and then up here. And the idea for the helix and the lower staging is that that will essentially be kind of interchange traffic from other railroads. The actual line of the railroad continues up that way and up through the helix up to the top deck. And then I will show you where it comes out on the top deck. So once the train has traveled around the helix and gets up to this level, it comes out from around the corner. You can't see it from this side, and then comes along these tracks right in here, and this is the duck under to get into the room. It comes and crosses that line, and then can hit either one of these 2 tracks on this lower level of the duck under. From there, the train continues along this lower level of the duck under, continues around the tracks right here, and across this upper level of the layout right here, and then it comes over here to my lumber mill. And at the lumber mill, there are two sidings. So there's one siding that actually splits into two. That is where it's going to be the unloading zone for the logs coming in. And then there's a second siding here that splits out and actually splits off again, goes over here, and that will be for loading the finished product from the lumber mill. And then from there, the main line continues across my layout, and it goes around and curves around that way. So once the train leaves the lumber yard area, it travels through a couple of rock cuts and around here through, this is going to be a small lake scene, needs more trees, some buildings, things like that. The water has been poured. It's a little bit dusty right now. Continues across this small bridge and then continues across in front of this rock cut right here around the corner and goes across the duck under again on the rear track while climbing a hill gradually to go down to the far end again. And then at the far end, the train continues up in the trees, gradually climbing just in front of that basement window, up around a curve behind the lumber yard, and then continues up along the hill, up along the side here. As the train comes out from behind the lumber mill, it continues up here, and there's a siding that comes in from the other direction that up here. This is going to be kind of my logging scene. You can see a little logging truck right here, and a load of logs in a car here. So there's going to be more of a developed logging scene here. The trains then, the entrance to the logging scene is right there, and then they continue across here. And right here is a turnout where the trains have a choice of either coming on this near track that goes across this curved trestle here, or going across that farther track through another bridge and into that tunnel opening back there. I'll get out of the way so you can see it. And what happens inside here, this is actually a track that loops around on top of my helix, and the trains can go in this way into a tunnel opening that's just off camera, or that way, and this ends up being a large turnaround loop inside this mountain or hillside. So the idea is that if I have my tour train come up, it can stop here, and then freights can come in and go into that tunnel up there. And inside this hill, there is a turnout so that if you're going in through that tunnel over there, you can take the alternate sort of left track out of the turnout, and that will lead to my 3 tracks that are my upper staging, which is as if you saw earlier in the video, that's the upper deck above my duck under coming into the room. Of course, the tour train can come in here, continue into the tunnel, loop around, and then just go back down and head south through the entire layout all the way down. So that's kind of the overall plan for the layout. It starts at the south end with the steel mill, the rail yard, the paper mill, the small town or city, goes through the helix, across the duck under. At the far end, where it curves and before it gets to the lumber mill, I'm actually trying to build a little small town or village there as well. You might have seen that little yellow house that's there. Goes past the lumber mill, circles around here, crosses the original track where it came up along, continues up along the back track, goes through this logging scene, gets up into this park area here, and then the tracks lead off into the upper staging. Now I do have couple of turnouts. If I flip one right here and one right there on my duck under, that I can actually run trains as a continuous loop on this lower track on the upper deck here as well. Because sometimes it's just nice to have a train running, because essentially this is a point-to-point layout. However, there is a loop ability on this upper deck where I can just flip it and a train can run around the track. I think what I'll do now is I will end this video with a cab ride starting from the upper staging, ending all the way down on my turntable. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.